Big Rigs Over-the-Road Racing is renowned as one of the greatest games to ever grace this planet. Surely, every soul out there has seen the ultimate gaming experience of being able to go in reverse, entering a new plane of existence, becoming an interdimensional explorer with the simple press of an arrow key. Driving your four cars, only having 5 tracks with one that crashes the game when you try to load in. Your opponent doesn't move, so all you can do is explore the wasteland Big Rigs has to offer. It's a once-in-a-lifetime, transient experience that nothing else can mother bird to baby bird feed you. You are winner at all times. Alright. All jokes aside, it's truly unreal how in the year 2003, GameMill Entertainment decided to publish this and actually sell it on store shelves. Honestly, when looking at it for real, I really don't see how they did. I'm assuming there was some sort of forbidden tactic used because it's quite clear from 2 to 3 seconds of game time, Big Rigs is a scam. Even when you apply the long-awaited update that creates massive moments like the other truck moving, you still cannot call this a game. Literally, the best part of this situation is the back of the box that might as well be a copy pasta at this point. From the desert to the plains, you'll be hauling loads and trying to stay one step ahead of the law as you climb into your big rig for non-stop driving action. Race across America and deliver your load to its destination before the competition. So keep the tank full and your pedal to the metal as you rack up points and own the road. Someone read that, thought it was interesting, bought it, and this is what they dealt with. We laugh now, but a person, a real human being, in 2003, bought this at a store. I would not be surprised if Big Rigs caused the first ever justified Karen moment. But if you are a person who would want to try giving the benefit of the doubt to this for whatever reason, maybe GameMill got hoodwinked by Stellar Stone, the developers of Big Rigs, sorcery was casted by Sergey Titty and his henchmen, somehow, someway, GameMill was fooled into publishing Big Rigs. There's no way they'd ever want to work with these guys again. Well, how dense you are to think up a thought like that. Of course they would. We got another racing game called Midnight Race Club Supercharged, a title that sounds oddly familiar to a Rockstar franchise a lot of people forget exists. And if you look at the back of the box to see what you're gonna be dealing with, Midnight Race Club is already running that mouth. There's no room for crybabies. So if you don't have the confidence and car to take it all the way to the top, go home and cry to your mommy. Down here, it says, a variety of tracks for endless gameplay, awesome supercharged motorcycles that scream, 60 different ways to race. I really don't know what that's supposed to mean, but sure, whatever, doesn't matter. This released in 2004, and after playing Big Rigs, expectations are surely soaring into other galaxies. So smack $40 down on the table, or however much it was, and you bring home good old fucking Big Rigs again. It's the same exact game with swapped vehicle models. They even forgot to get rid of the lights from where they were on the truck models in Big Rigs, so they're just hovering behind whatever vehicle you drive. Not only that, we're also given a camera that is constantly bouncing up and down that I'm guessing is the way it is thanks to the blue-skinned Megamind freakazoids over at Stellar Stone not wanting to go that extra mile to adjust it properly. It's unreal. We of course got the same tracks, every vehicle shares the same speed as the trucks did in Big Rigs, and don't worry, each of them are still equipped with time-traveling technology, so if you want to back it up, cutting through the space-time continuum, meeting Fred Flintstone and the rest of his mouth-breathing comrades, you can do that if you choose. The only tangible gameplay difference with Midnight Race Club is how the physics function. In Big Rigs, you can tear up any object that stands in your path, passing straight through it with your wheels of steel. You can drive up 180-degree inclines, enter the ethereal plane in a heartbeat. Nothing in this universe or multiverse can impede your march through Forgotten Road 1. In Midnight Race Club, when you crash into things, the car jerks backwards, and if you try going up hills, you can't do it. Unless you go in reverse, then we're back to business as usual. You can leave the stratosphere all you want. Just when you assume humanity was gained, we go straight back to Hollow State. The only credit you can give this game is that you can't pass through objects at all, even when going in reverse. Still, it's genuinely depressing the bar is that low. Praise for Midnight Race Club equals game kind of working. How can this happen not once, but twice, where this is being sold for real money? How are we selling two games where you can't lose? What sociopath would agree to publish these? If all this wasn't enough, less than a year ago, GameMill put Big Rigs on Steam. For only $5.99, you can play this godsend of a computer game that also has a free DLC adding all the Midnight Race Club Supercharged content. They're the same game anyways, so you might as well. I also love the AI-generated art we have here, finally giving us a "You Are Winner" truck like we always asked for. Honestly, if you're going to re-release gems like this, why not do it to some of the other games you decided to publish from Stellarstone GameMill? Say, maybe a Gettysburg Civil War Battle? A game that is supposed to be an RTS title where you can move your soldiers around with zero gameplay involved whatsoever? I was playing for a bit, trying to kill these blue-coated gentlemen since I didn't know what else to do, and I realized after a while, you can't kill them, and your troops can't die either. The unit numbers get stuck at 99 and don't move anymore. Did they forget to program death? Another brain blast I had was how the game plays by itself. After a set time, more troops will arrive and others will start moving on their own. So you don't need to do anything. You can just sit there and watch. I seriously don't know what they were thinking with this, but of course it needs a sequel. GameMill and Stellarstone teamed up yet again to re-release essentially the same game with a different name, called Ultimate Civil War Battles: Robert E. Lee vs. Ulysses S. Grant. However, this copy-paste is not as egregious as Midnight Race Club was to Big Rigs. With Civil War, they increased the amount of battles from Gettysburg's hefty 2 battles up to 4. And guess what? People actually die now, so the game works. It's still a rotten sack of potatoes, but it's the most functional thing we've played so far, which really isn't saying much, let's be real. You can find far superior RTS games from the 90s, but quality is obviously not what these guys are looking for. These few games alone would make anyone realize GameMill does not give a rat's ass about what they are publishing. They published every game Stellarstone developed, aside from one called Taxi Racer, which was Stellarstone's first step in the gaming industry. I tried playing it. For some reason, all the cars were preparing for liftoff in the menu, and when I loaded in, I realized we got ourselves a Crazy Taxi ripoff that crashed when I touched a wall, and for some reason, it wouldn't open again. Did GameMill look at this and think, we need to get in on some of that, and wanted to bring their reverse talents to the masses? The only positive part of Stellarstone and GameMill's war against wallets is that it didn't last for too long. Stellarstone's final developed game, to my knowledge, was Midnight Race Club Supercharged in 2004. For GameMill, it appears they laid low for a little bit, only publishing a few titles through the rest of the 2000s, like Dairy Queen Tycoon, oddly. I'd love to know whose pecker got swallowed for that to happen. Then, of course, GameMill gave us some zero-talent titles on the Wii, like Water Sports and Pheasants Forever Wing Shooter, because it might as well be a law with these companies. You need to release dirt like this as your ritual to join the Shovelware Society cult. The circus only published a handful of games on the Wii, so I'm assuming they didn't want to compete with the Monstar team of Data Design Interactive, who monopolized this practice, which makes sense. You can't outproduce a company who built an elaborate 15-layered scheme to release junk on this console. That's 100% a war you cannot win. To be blunt, nothing of worth truly happened with GameMill for quite some time. It wasn't until 2017 where the Phoenix Rise came to be. With all their competition, like Phoenix Games or Blast Entertainment, essentially snubbed out at this point, GameMill had the John Cena trumpets blaring in their skull. My time is now. We can fully take the throne as champions of unparalleled licensed video games. No more wasting our time giving random groups of people chances with unestablished IPs. The recognizable names is where all the Skrilla is. And what a great idea that is. Say if you put Nerf Legends on a store shelf, Nerf fans everywhere are going to finish on their wall. A Nerf first-person shooter game in my year of 2021? No way! Of course I'll do my little tutorial double jumping around, shooting a few spider robots with Nerf guns that have zero visual impact, entering myself into the first mission that will surely be a bombshell, using my Parkinson's-riddled character, bestowing my presence to Play-Doh Land, going against more spiders and robotic Hummins. Look, I don't even think it needs to be said, but from the visual alone, you can tell the stiffness and fluidity of movement is beyond archaic for the year 2021. It's not even just running around. Like, how are you gonna tell me my character can't jump from zipline to zipline without the player having an aneurysm? Right here, they expected me to drop down to a zipline below me, which sounds simple, but when you jump off, your character gets stuck and you cannot maneuver yourself whatsoever in midair. You need to be absolutely perfect when you jump off, or else you fall, forcing you to keep watching your character lag his way onto the zipline in the first place, really putting the entertainment in GameMill. If we look past that, Nerf Legends is a game where you simply need to go Dicko mode, running through levels, killing a bunch of hardly sentient enemies, raw dogging it with whatever weapons you have at your disposal. I say hardly sentient because dying is almost impossible unless you're hardly paying attention. Practically every enemy drops health pickups when they die. Besides, if you do happen to get dumpstered by one of the legged papier-mâché projects, there's no punishment for it. You respawn basically right where you were, so you can keep throwing yourself at the level until you win, no matter the enemies that stand in your path. Occasionally, you'll get those moments where a little cutscene is dished out, attempting to show how dominant and intimidating a certain enemy is going to be, and right when the throwdown begins, you grab the thing, toss it right into a washing machine, and walk away forgetting it ever happened. Needless to say, you have no challenge whatsoever when it comes to the enemies. Yeah, you can definitely argue this is a kid's game, which is a topic we'll get to a bit later. I just feel like the simplicity went a little bit too far here, especially considering how shallow Nerf Legends is. Aside from shooting enemies with non-existent difficulty, the only other thing this game has you do in levels is shoot buttons on the wall to open a new area. Every level I played went the same exact way. You run into a room, fight enemies that have 62 IQ, shoot buttons to open a door, shoot more enemies, shoot more buttons to open a door. Occasionally tossing in a segment that exists for seemingly no reason at all. Why am I playing Kovacs in a jungle? You have me sit here for over a minute shooting targets that don't do anything for me. It doesn't matter how many you shoot, your accuracy, whatever, it doesn't matter. You can sit here doing nothing for the entirety of the allotted time if you really wanted to, and the outcome is the same. This, of course, is not the only time waster, we'll call it. We also have these arena battles, forcing you to hold out, shooting the same few enemies for 3 to 4 minutes, waiting for it to end. I thought we were way past this hogwash of padding out game time. These are simply included to make a person play longer in hopes of them feeling like the levels are longer than they actually are. Like, is it really necessary to have me do one of these survival time wasters 3 times in the same area, in the same level? How stupid do they think the player is? I never understood this practice. It's straight up laziness that people try defending by saying kids won't notice. A very lame excuse if I say so myself. I say, kid, just go play Fortnite. Play Minecraft. 2 games that are heavily marketed towards children, and don't do this to them. It's a cop-out excuse. Data Design Interactive, Phoenix Games, and Blast Entertainment all said the same thing. Our games are made for kids, to attempt justifying selling a bunch of worthless products. And look here, I wasn't expecting too much from a Nerf game. It's not to say you can't make a good game out of Nerf, because you definitely could if you tried. Unfortunately, the effort skill tree was not spec'd into with this one. I stuck a few hours into Nerf Legends, seriously trying to understand why a person would continue playing this unironically, and I couldn't find anything. You have 5 worlds of riveting action, we'll call it, forcing you to fight a boss at the end of each one. Half the time, they just stood there letting me shoot them repeatedly until my purple-haired alpha male was victorious. The only part of any of these fights that got me half chubbed was hearing Torbjorn talking to me in a few of the cutscenes.
Master Silska, Our guest needs a lesson in agility.
I would genuinely love to know if any human being out there tested a battle against these bosses. They are actually brain dead. They need to do a lot more than this to stop me and my bingo wings from soaring in to decimate them all and every level afterwards. If I hiked up my skirmish pants, sitting my ass down for 3 to 4 hours, I could complete the entire thing. I'm not going to, but I could. And that isn't a knee slapper either. Nerf Legends can actually be finished in about 3 to 4 hours with no knowledge of what is coming up. Also making it even more pathetic, they needed to pad out levels in a game that short. But I'm sure you're thinking, fuck you, man. That's not bad for a $10 game. Nerf Legends is $50. Or was. Time has passed since release, and also you can't buy it digitally anymore. The Hasbro x GameMill collab event ended, but when it released, this was sold for $50. Containing 3 to 4 hours of content, again, levels being padded to increase that said playtime, gameplay and movement that is early mid-2000s level for a shooter, poorly programmed AI, zero thought or creativity stuck into any level you play, and repetitious objectives that cycle from level to level. No adult or child would be entertained by this. The only real positives you can give this thing are like, you can unlock new Nerf guns. There's a multiplayer that I can't find a game for, and I'm sure it's awful. These aren't really praises, though. These are kind of expected in 2021, are they not? You shouldn't be selling this for $50 at any point. So this started to make me wonder. You guys released Nerf Legends. I'm guessing it was some sort of scam attempt that may or may not have failed. Possibly you gave the project to a studio that you were given leg drops to every morning. Whatever transpired here, surely it was a one-off. And you guys wouldn't ever think about doing that to another radical IP like Ninja Turtles. These radioactive turtles do not condone theft. Only heart disease and high cholesterol from eating pizza. In 2024, GameMill published Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Arcade: Wrath of the Mutants, where you can choose from the 4 turtles, Leo, Big Mike, Donald, and Raph, with the correct choice being Michael, bringing you into a world of a beat-em-up. An expected turn of events, there are a ton of TMNT beat-em-up titles out there, so why not add one more to the pile? We get to run our enemies' pockets, watching Mike go from his police coming to Naruto run cycle in a matter of seconds, going from screen to screen, pressing more buttons, until we reach a boss to make whoever it is cry uncle. It's quite simple, really. What you see is what you get. However, this game has a multicolored, deformed, AI-generated elephant in the room. The graphics are bad, mainly the character models. When you finish a level, you get a close-up of the turtle you're playing as, and Donald here has no eyes and a fucking red tooth. Bring this bitch to the dentist. All the other enemies and turtles fare no differently. Was it some sort of forgotten Neolithic art form attempting to make the models stand out? The backgrounds look fine, they're not good by any means, but they're decent enough to have the models stick out more than they otherwise would due to the contrast. And I wish that's where the talk ended with these characters. If that graphical turmoil wasn't enough, as you play through the game, the turtles continuously make irritating yelling and screeching sounds while fighting. I get you're trying to have EA Sports, it's in the game, radiating through my noggin while playing, but it does not stop. The torture chamber wails brought me to the point of tossing the headset right off because I didn't want to deal with it anymore. I wasn't up to that challenge. It's not like the challenge would have been impossible to conquer though, thanks to what is undoubtedly the largest insult Wrath of the Mutants has to offer. When you buy a $30 game, you kind of expect substance, some girth in there. Otherwise, that $30 might as well have went to a homeless person outright telling you they're going to buy crack rock cocaine with the money you give them before you do it. When I turned this game on, initially I thought this was World 1. You'd pick between the 5 levels, beat them, dick down Shredder, and move on to another section of the story. Wish upon a fucking star. This is the entire game. You get 6 levels that you can finish in under an hour. It took me 58 minutes to reach Super Shredder and walk him into another plane of existence. $30 for 58 minutes of gameplay. The funniest thing is, if someone bought this on Steam, you can literally beat the whole game with no prior understanding of what's coming and get your money back because of the 2-hour refund policy. If you got it on console though, those are more stingy with refunds to my knowledge. GameMill just tossed a heater right into your gut. You'd be stuck having a game you spent $30 on with no replayability, every turtle plays the same, there's no progression, there's no nothing. And if you really want to beat Wrath of the Mutant's teeth down its throat, 2 years earlier in 2022, Shredder's Revenge released for only $25 that has an animated graphic style that is actually appealing to look at. There are more playable characters than just the turtles that all have statistical differences. The game has unlockables, you can power yourself up as you play, and is infinitely more enjoyable while also having a real story to go along with it. In Wrath of the Mutants, there is no story whatsoever. The only cutscene comes after finishing your 6 levels, where you see April looking like a deep lore cryptid. That's all you get. I seriously cannot believe the audacity to publish this Wrath of the Mutants game with that price tag. There is zero meat on the bone with an absurd price attached for what you're getting, seeming to be a common theme. After I grinded out those 2 bad Larrys, I wanted to go off the deep end, giving a monster truck game a try. I don't give a shit about these things, but why not at this point? GameMill allowed Hot Wheels monster trucks Stunt Mayhem to enter society in 2024. Loads of people have Hot Wheels nostalgia, dunking the toy cars off the sides of overpasses into oncoming traffic, going hog wild with them, making this a perfect opportunity to go with a brand you know. After finishing the little tutorial showing you how to do tricks, how to do the oh so difficult task of accelerating, discovering that monster trucks can break things, you'll quickly realize that said tutorial was the entire game. You're given this world map and you're expected to finish a bunch of events. There's probably 10 per location that consist of you playing whatever monster truck you want. I'm sure you'll be shocked to hear this, but none of them are unique. They're all the same from a gameplay standpoint. You then take that big mechanical beast into those aforementioned events to repeat the same handful of objectives over and over and over and over again. Destroy boxes, go on ramps pretending you're a cut vehicle from Taxi Racer, go through a hoop, do a backflip, or perform your chosen truck's special move to make the crowd go wild by pressing a button, watching the truck spin around with a few colors circling it. If I saw a monster truck doing this, I'd leave the stadium thinking the world is ending. How are these people not fearing for their lives? With this brain rot gameplay loop in mind that has no reason to continue harping on about, you'd hope at the very least, the environments would consistently change to break up the monotony somehow. They don't. For more than half my playtime, I felt like I was experiencing PT virtual reality. You open the door, same arena. You open the door, same arena. You open the door, same dirt-ass arena. Never did I view an interesting world, seeing Lisa, no CB radio sync baby. All I'm given is a couple of ramps or cars put in the ground as unique pieces to repeat the same objectives I've already done before. And when I finally did reach a new looking area upon completing my numerous events, it was anticlimactic, mainly because the objectives don't change until you see a glimmer of hope. Boss battle. Wow, something different. Nope, it's breaking pieces of cardboard to go on a scorpion ramp you can go on in every other level within this world. Why was this made again? You've probably guessed by now, yes, Hot Wheels Monster Trucks is a $40 video game. I don't need to mention the graphical fidelity since it speaks for itself, nor should anything need to be said of why this should not be $40. Stunt Mayhem, for the 3rd time in a row, is hardly excusable as a game. We're in modern day data design territory at this point. A lot of the same tactics are being used, really. Recycling levels, little to no replayability, needless gameplay padding, or using a quantity tactic tactic, attempting to trick players into thinking there is more content than there actually is. For instance, if you compare Stunt Mayhem to an old-timer of the shovelware society released by Data Design called Monster Trucks, that game used nighttime and reversing tracks as their casted spell to make an unsuspecting person believe there was a lot more content contained within. Stunt Mayhem does a similar play in their own way by adding a new ramp or switching around a few of the destructibles while recycling the same arena as their tactic to make someone think there's a lot more going on. With both titles having rosters of vehicles that don't have any gameplay differences whatsoever. They only exist to make you feel like you're accomplishing or unlocking something. And yeah, obviously, Stunt Mayhem is a better game than Monster Trucks because you can't be as egregious with recycling anymore. Monster Trucks or Data Design's tier of filth is not going to fly now, but it's pretty obvious what's going on here. GameMill gets their grubby mitts on something that is recognizable, Hot Wheels, Nerf, whatever. They slapshot it to a development team not many mortals have heard of, presumably working for very little, allowing the mill of games to pump out releases as cheap as possible, or in some cases, probably more often than not, as quickly as possible. A mentality that affected these bandits more than anything else in the modern era in 2023 with Skull Island: Rise of Kong. At this point, being GameMill's most infamous release, most likely because a lot of people don't know they publish big rigs too, Skull Island is up there regardless though. It's one of those video games that lets out an audible gadzooks from anyone who looks at it. No one can truly understand why Big Congo Mother exists within a watercolor painting, got the Crimson Chin chromosome, Unibrow DLC paid and downloaded. The grime is oozing from every orifice of this magical world you just stumbled into. Like, look at these cutscenes. We got bush movement, big monster roaring equals make screen shake a little bit, and our star of the show never knowing what emotion is supposed to be expressed. As we watch along, finding out Mama Kong is trying to find Father Kong and Baby Kong, where you are then bound for glory, clobbering the wilderness of Skull Island. You learn the controls, discovering if you keep tapping your attack button, Mama Kong pulls off a non-lethal Jax Mortal Kombat 2 fatality. If you press the power attack, she becomes an ape helicopter. We climb on Capellini. It's typical stuff you'd expect from any video game about monkey people. The part that no one expects is when you finish parkouring your way through a cave and you watch a Mesozoic possession occur. I am not pressing anything here. Mother Kong is running into this Dwayne on her own accord. Apparently, whenever you reach this part of the tutorial, you need to restart the game, otherwise she'll be stuck doing this forever. Even if you unplug your controller, try to use the keyboard, you can't even pause the game. Nothing works. All control is lost. This happens after about 10 minutes. And I think a lot of people who see this would immediately request a refund, knowing what lies ahead is not for the faint of heart. But if you do happen to be that big of a Skull Island fan, restarting your game, preparing yourself for action once more, viewing your emotional moment of seeing Papa Kong get his shit rocked, you go against Gaw in a battle you're scripted to lose, Mama Kong gets dunked on, Baby Kong gets away, grows up to become a big boy, where you inevitably reach the ultimate experience that, let's be serious for a second, doesn't need to have its enthralling gameplay broken down. Rise of Kong is a title that has been torn apart. Video after video was made about it in 2023, calling it the worst game of that year, and yeah, that's a very hard statement to disagree with. Skull Island follows the blueprint of practically every other game we've talked about, making me believe GameMill has a pre-written outline for how they want their games to be made. You're given 5 whole Mozart paragons for Monkey Man to scrape his paws through. You got a few creatures to tussle with if you so choose. And from time to time, you'll run into a clear objective, having you dish out some serious bloodshed against the local wildlife. This is one of the 2 total objectives you can waltz into, by the way. The other is called Destroy, where you need to press the power attack button on a bundle of sticks. Upon finishing either one of those nail-biting challenges, you get a few skill points to use on this unbelievably in-depth tree that is depressingly the most engaging thing out of any game we've talked about so far. There's probably 2 to 3 of those previously mentioned challenges spread throughout each area. At the end of those said areas, you get into a boss fight. The first is Earth Giza, or translated to English, melatonin toxin, because it takes like 400 hits to kill this thing, with all of its moves being toddler Fisher-Price toy levels of telegraphed. Then you get others like King Dengiz, that is the most uneventful slog of a scuffle anyone could ever do. You literally don't even need to move to win. You can just stand there, embodying Pablo Sanchez, hurling rocks at the big dog. When he throws rocks at you, press your dodge button, then drink through the fountain of Pablo once more. This was a game sold for money. Skull Island, or as the streets call it, Monkey.exe, that was actually changed by the way, it's Kong.exe now, still has the default Unreal Engine icon though. This is one of the most self-explanatory missions one could go through. Whether you're experiencing it visually or experiencing it yourself, there's nothing fun about this game. Not a single inkling of combat is going to have you feel like one of the kids in an Airhead commercial. Thankfully, the development team also realized this and was nice enough to make it completely pointless most of the time. Those challenges I mentioned before are the only ways to get skill points, so you technically don't need to fight anything in the open world because there's no reason to, unless you are an absolute fanatic of seeing the same moves spammed. I don't know, I saw it as a blessing. Our ape helicopter's rotor deserves a break. The only time it needs to be continuously oiled up is when a clear mission bugs out and you need to keep repeating it, which is something that unfortunately happened to me. I had to do this clear mission 6 times over because one of the enemies kept randomly disappearing and was nowhere to be found, forcing me to keep reloading a save until that decided not to transpire. You'd figure a game that is this bare bones with content and has such a tedious, simple loop would at least be bug-free. Apparently not. The cockroaches have fully infested these lands, and you run into them constantly. Like enemies becoming sentient, hovering on the ground while they're dead. I had that shit happen with Kong getting stuck, not being able to move multiple times. Moments where your attack buttons stop working. Kong will do some strange mating ritual instead, so you need to die just to deal damage again. Multiple clear missions had enemies that didn't spawn, and those are just a few. You don't even need to try to find these things because they're always going to rear their head. We could go on and on with this game more than I already have. It's just a genuine disgrace. Physical copies of Skull Island: Rise of Kong went onto store shelves. Some people may have gotten this as a Christmas gift. Does GameMill care about that? Of course not. This rotten cockamamie dirt was perfectly fine to release. People a lot of the time ask in these situations, do you blame the publisher or the developer? Well, in this case, we know the 2023 Gorilla incident is no fault to the development team. It's purely the fault of GameMill. They gave Iguanabee a single year to create this entire game from scratch. Thanks to an interview a member of the team had with Verge, they gave a bit of insight on what was going on here, containing the greatest quote of all time. The crunch was really set in motion in February. I was on automatic pilot by the end of February because all hope was lost. Nothing screams a positive development cycle more than accepting defeat partway through. Reading this interview adds even more validity to GameMill just not giving a fuck at all. Find a company who will work for cheap to dump your project onto, or give an unreasonable deadline for a game to be finished, probably both 99% of the time, so you can keep upcharging crap like this because of the name attached. Skull Island, to my knowledge, has never been updated, and if it was, nothing is tangible. I kid you not, the biggest change I found was the file name being switched from monkey.exe to kong.exe, and they are still selling Skull Island for $40. The whole situation is a real-life version of Kong's family being dominated. It's not good. We've looked at 4 games from the modern era, all being published by GameMill, and all of them being consistent with how they look and or play. Sadly, we can keep going with it because the fun never ends. Avatar: The Last Airbender, Quest for Balance, a franchise that is filled with a lot of enticing characters, a reasonable amount of bending styles to work with. You can flesh out that universe. You can make a fun game out of that, right? Yeah, you absolutely could. But it's not Quest for Balance. We're playing a game where you need to repeat the same few mundane objectives over and over and over with little to no depth. Who expected that? And again, no one can convince me GameMill does not have a script telling the contracted studios to do this. I refuse to believe otherwise. The consistency of this practice speaks for itself. Each chapter has you enter a village or some sort of hub. You do a vanilla objective like finding items, fight a couple enemies, or break a few pieces of wood. You'll do some sort of puzzle like using a few characters' bending powers to turn stuff on or create an ice pillar with the final goal of bringing a torch to a lamp. You play Pepsi Man, dodging obstacles and grabbing little tokens, adding absolutely nothing to the game whatsoever. Then lastly, in the bag of tricks, you need to fight really tough bosses that make the ability of inhaling and exhaling look like a talent. You fight Prince Zuko 3 times throughout the first few chapters, and all of them are the exact same telegraphed kindergarten spelling bee fuck up. We see Arrow. He moves in direction of Arrow. Big ring of fire happens. We hit him 3 times. Repeat. Even the fight against Hey Bai, you'd think that's gonna be cool. The thing is massive. Big Man could level out entire villages if he sneezed. And this panda-colored tree-licking buffoon is overcome by Aang slapping a couple boxes around to get them on platforms to launch them towards the guy. On top of that, getting hit by the boss is practically impossible. It shoots out the slowest laser of all time as its one attack, and you just stand behind a rock to avoid it. Where's the game? Do people really view games this blandly? There's a lot more you can do with them, you know. You can add depth to combat, change the puzzles up a little bit, do something to make it more engaging, but sadly, that vanilla scoop isn't even the worst part of the game. If I had to guess, a lot of players who got this got it for the story, and Quest of Balance breaks the 101 rule of any visual media in the most egregious way possible. For 60 to 70% of the important story development, instead of showing you pictures, showing characters talking, valuable cutscenes, or letting you experience it yourself through gameplay, we get these boxes of text that appear to tell us something that transpired, then we're thrown into whatever situation is happening. Show don't tell is beginner level storytelling. That's the magnum opus of making any piece of visual media remotely engaging, especially if it's a video game. My only guess is maybe the budget wasn't there. There are animated cutscenes that don't look awful, being few and far between, so it's most likely a money thing. But when a large portion of the plot is delivered on a partially transparent blue background and plain text, it ruins any enjoyment one could get when trying to indulge themselves into a game's story, leaving the player to simply continue running down linear paths, partaking in a subpar husk of fighting, questioning how you got baited to buy this in the first place. $50, by the way. The only positives you can give Quest of Balance is that the game lasts for more than 3 to 4 hours, being the one game we've talked about where you can say such a thing. Sadly, it's just a lot of repeating the exact same things over and over again. We have a more engaging, a word I use loosely, skill tree than Skull Island had, and you have a few different characters to play as. To be blunt, this game is fucking garbage for what you're paying, and exists purely to cash in on what was the upcoming Avatar reboot in 2024. You should realistically only be dishing out $10 to $15 for the quality you're receiving. This game is more expensive than stuff like Arc Raiders, Helldivers 2, and the plethora of indie games that are genuinely worth the time playing. Even if you look at a GameMill published title that isn't one you'd force to lick the fattest part of your boot, like DreamWorks Kart or Nickelodeon Kart, these aren't bad games by any means. They aren't good either, just average. You can play as Garfelf, SpongeBob, Shrek, whoever from the various franchises in each respective game. There's unlockables, characters have differing stats, you can swap parts on carts to alter said stats, the tracks aren't duplicating before your very eyes, and the art design isn't disgusting in either of these. You give yourself a few hours of half-decent kart racer action. In comparison to everything else we've looked at, these two games kick ass. They still aren't worth the money though. I don't see in what galaxy you'd be able to justify dropping 50 bones on them. Imagine being a GameMill collector. The ones I talked about total up to $210. And there are still more I gave a whirl that I didn't bother mentioning. Like Goosebumps Terror in Little Creek, that is basically a children's Unity horror game that is a Unity horror game. Admittedly, it's not terrible, just a below average game for $50. I also played Street Outlaws 2, an entire game centering around drag racing, and also a funny thing about it, this is a video game that released in 2021 with the only graphic setting you can change being HDR on or off. Big Rigs has more settings than a 2021 video game. What planet are we on? I know some people out there may try to defend GameMill, mainly because a lot of their releases are for kids, which is an important piece to look at. Obviously, Nickelodeon games, Goosebumps, Nerf, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are primarily for kids. However, it does not excuse laziness. This kid game mouth breather behavior has been happening all throughout history. As much as I wish it was a GameMill exclusive practice, it's definitely not. A personal experience I have is Elmo's Letter Adventure. I got it as a kid, and I wanted to die when I saw it. I knew the game was going to be worse than anything else I could play, so I never touched it after the one time I tried it. But I seriously believed over time, games like this would stop releasing, especially when Bobby, Timmy, Tommy, and Mikey and the Squadron can play Fortnite or Roblox for free. Sadly, though, as I said when we talked about Phoenix Games, Data Design Interactive, and Blast Entertainment in previous videos, it must be working for real if GameMill keeps publishing stuff. Maybe some people are happy to fork up $50 to buy the latest Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer game that hardly looks better than the one on Wii from 2010. I don't know. The way I see it, these games are like legal scams. They know what they're doing, GameMill does not give a damn about the quality, and is just trying to make a quick buck by obnoxiously pricing objectively low quality titles simply due to the fact the game is about a recognizable franchise. Even if you take the ones into account that aren't completely worthless games, it's still ridiculous to me. Let me know what you think about GameMill in the comments below. Do you think their published video games are a legal scam, or do gamers deserve this treatment? Having illustrious titles such as Hot Wheels Monster Trucks Same Arena 10 times and Ninja Turtles Refund Policy Abuser tossed straight into their laps. Big ups to our channel members who go above and beyond to support the channel further. If you want to join them and get early access to content, hit the join button right next to the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. As always, take very good care of yourselves, and I hope to see you all again in the next video.